When they said he climbed inside the mat to get the shoes, I already knew that was a lie.
We opened the body in this particular case, and the organs were not there. Paper had been stuffed into the cavity to fill it up.
Body parts are missing. Evidence is missing.
October the 10th, 1995. A date that marked not just a birth, but the beginning of a tragedy that would take nearly 2 decades to unfold. Kendrick Johnson entered the world that day, described by those who loved him as the laughter, the joy of the family home. By 17, he'd become a promising athlete with dreams of playing professional football. A kid with a knack for numbers who could keep track of his allowance in his head. Science, basketball, football, Kendrick excelled in ways that made his future seem limitless. January 10th, 2013, Lowndes High School, a sprawling campus near the Georgia-Florida state line, 3,000 students walking its halls daily. The clock struck 3 p.m. Students filtered out heading home. All except Kendrick. He was staying after hours for a basketball game, something he'd done countless times before. But this day would be different. This day, Kendrick Johnson would never make it home. 10 p.m. Curfew time at the Johnson household. Jacqueline, Kendrick's mother, felt the first whispers of dread as the minutes ticked by. No call, no text, nothing. Midnight, Jacqueline drove to the school herself, scanning empty parking lots and darkened buildings. The silence of the campus offering no answers. At 12:30 a.m., she called the police to report her son missing. He's probably out with friends, the officer suggested. Maybe a girlfriend, but Jacqueline knew. Mothers always know. Something was deeply wrong. Dawn broke on January 11th. Jacqueline returned to the school at first light, desperately handing out flyers with Kendrick's face. The school counselors checked attendance records. Kendrick had missed his 4th period weight training class the previous day, something completely out of character. 9:30 a.m. A group of students entered the old gymnasium for class. In the corner, vertical wrestling mats stood lined against the wall. One student noticed something unusual, socks and feet visible from inside one of the rolled-up mats. Probably someone's idea of a joke, she thought at first, calling her friends over. The teacher approached, reached for an ankle, hoping for a response. There was none. The stillness told him everything he needed to know. 10:32 a.m. The 911 call from Lowndes High School. There's a dead body out here in the old gym. Police were already at the school following up on Jacqueline's missing person report. They rushed to the gymnasium as word spread through the hallways. A body had been found, head first inside a rolled-up wrestling mat. One student would later recall, it was so quiet outside you could hear a pin drop. The mat was unrolled. What they discovered defied comprehension. Kendrick Johnson, positioned upside down in the center of the mat. One arm stretched above his head, the other around his waist. His jeans unzipped, pockets partially pulled out. His face, bloated and swollen beyond recognition. Blood and vomit pooled where his head had been. Jacqueline Johnson would learn of her son's fate by overhearing a phone call. She wasn't allowed to see her boy, not yet. Only Kendrick's shoe found on the floor would confirm what her heart already knew. The investigators were quick with their theory, a tragic accident. A teenager who died trying to retrieve his shoes from inside a mat. But the questions had only begun, questions that would haunt a family, divide a community, and remain unanswered for years to come. Within hours of discovering Kendrick's body, investigators formed their conclusion. A teenager reaches for shoes stored in a vertical wrestling mat. He slips in head first, gets stuck, suffocates, a terrible accident. Case closed, but the evidence told a different story. The mat stood 6 feet tall and about 3 feet wide when rolled, with a center hole just 14 inches across. Kendrick's shoulders measured around 19 inches. While some argued he could have entered at an angle, others believed it would have been nearly impossible without assistance. How could he have voluntarily entered a space too small for his body? Then there were the shoes. One black and white Adidas shoe was found beneath Kendrick's head, resting atop blood and vomit. Yet the shoe appeared clean, untouched by either fluid. Critics questioned how it remained so unmarked if it had been there during his death. Another shoe nearby on the floor. A third pair, grey, white-orange Nikes, inexplicably tucked behind Kendrick's knees. If he was reaching for shoes, Kenneth Johnson would later ask, where did the extra pair come from? How did one shoe end up outside if he was so tightly wedged in? 50 feet from the mat, investigators found blood spatter on a wall. It didn't match Kendrick's DNA, and authorities declined further testing, citing the difficulty of screening the entire student body. For the Johnson family, this decision felt like a missed opportunity for truth. A yellow folder and textbook belonging to Kendrick lay on the floor. A hoodie with what appeared to be bloodstains on the sleeve was left uncollected. Georgia law mandated the coroner be notified immediately upon discovery of a body. Bill Watson received the call 6 hours after Kendrick was found. No cooperation from law enforcement at the scene, Watson noted in his death investigation report. Body noticeably moved, scene compromised. Perhaps most troubling was the surveillance footage. The school's 35 cameras should have captured everything. Instead, they revealed nothing. Before Kendrick entered, camera 1 recorded until 12:04 p.m., then nothing until 1:09 p.m. Cameras 2 and Chef I would be highly suspicious. Noted forensic video analyst Grant Fredericks when examining the footage, "We're missing information right now." The last confirmed sighting showed Kendrick entering the old gym at approximately 1:28 p.m. He never appeared on camera again, never shown entering the mat, never seen leaving the gymnasium. On May 2nd, despite mounting questions, Lowndes County authorities officially ruled Kendrick Johnson's death as accidental positional asphyxia. 1 hour after the announcement, the streets outside Lowndes High School filled with protesters. The official investigation had ended, but for the Johnson family, the search for truth had only begun. They still had my son's blood on their hands when they ruled it an accident. Jacqueline Johnson's words cut through a crowd of protesters gathered outside Lowndes High School. The family refused to accept the official ruling. Their son, an athlete who could sprint across football fields and dominate basketball courts, somehow unable to free himself from a gym mat? The Johnsons enlisted Reverend Floyd Rose from the Southern Christian Leadership Conference to investigate independently. Attorney Benjamin Crump, who had represented the families of Trayvon Martin and later George Floyd, joined their cause. "It defies all logic, the rules of science and common sense," Crump stated, that a 17-year-old athlete would climb into a wrestling mat, get stuck trying to get a tennis shoe and stop breathing. The paramedic report contradicted law enforcement claims. It stated Kendrick's body was only partially inside the mat with head, torso and arms exposed, not completely wedged inside as officers had claimed. The report also noted bruising near Kendrick's right jaw that wasn't mentioned in the autopsy. June 6, 2013, a judge granted permission to exhume Kendrick's body for a second autopsy. Dr. William Anderson, a forensic pathologist with 40 years' experience, made a horrifying discovery. Kendrick's organs, heart, lungs, brain, liver, were missing. Newspaper filled the cavities where vital organs should have been. The funeral home claimed this was common practice. Medical examiners called it unprecedented. Despite the missing organs, Anderson pressed forward. His conclusion shattered the accident theory. Unexplained apparent non-accidental blunt force trauma, murder, not accident. Anderson's theory, Kendrick had been placed in a stranglehold during an altercation, killed quickly, then hidden in the mat by panicked assailants. In October, an anonymous donor offered a $10,000 reward for information. U.S. Attorney Michael Moore announced a formal federal review. "I will follow the facts wherever they lead." Over 100 people were subpoenaed, thousands of emails and text messages reviewed. The Johnsons demanded answers about their son's final moments. Instead, they found themselves at the center of a battle that would test their resilience, drain their finances, and challenge their faith in the justice system. The Johnson family filed a $100 million lawsuit naming 38 defendants, including 2 classmates, Brian and Brandon Bell, sons of FBI agent Rick Bell. Their theory: the boys attacked Kendrick over a previous altercation on a school bus. The brothers denied involvement, claiming they were elsewhere when Kendrick died. By 2016, the Department of Justice closed its investigation, citing insufficient evidence. The Johnsons' lawsuit collapsed, leaving them ordered to pay $850,000 in attorney fees. The Johnson family continues their fight, a testament to parental love that refuses to surrender to unanswered questions. If you want more true crime stories that dig deeper than headlines, subscribe now. Some cases may be closed on paper, but the search for truth never ends.